Good morning. This is Tracy Drummond. I am in North Kansas City, Missouri with Harold Johannesen. Today we're going to be doing an oral history interview with Mr. Johannesen. I am the archivist for the Southern Labor Archives at Georgia State University Library, and this is for our Machinist Oral History Collection. Today is the 19th of August, 2015, and I'd like to welcome Mr. Johannesen to the interview. Welcome.
Welcome to you too.
And thank you so much for agreeing to sit for an interview with me. I think you'll find it a fun experience.
I think so.
Yeah. So let me get started by asking this. Where and when were you born?
I was born in Oak Park, Illinois, September 2nd, 1940.
And what, how many, did you have brothers and sisters?
Two sisters.
Two sisters, were they older or
younger?
Uh-huh,
Young, 4 years apart. My first sister's Shirley.
Okay.
And the second sister is Nancy. She was born 4 years after the...
Okay.
So she was 8 years younger than I was.
Okay. And what did your parents do when you were young?
My mother was definitely a homemaker the whole time.
Okay.
My dad worked construction and for Jewel food stores in a warehouse in Melrose Park, Illinois.
Okay. In the warehouse did he
They picked orders for trucks. And in other words, if a store ordered 100 cases of pop, or not pop was delivered by pop guys.
Yeah.
Say food supplies.
Okay.
And they would take that order to a truck, and then it would get put on a semi and hauled to that store.
Okay. Okay. And is that what he did most of the time that you were growing up?
No, it originally worked for the Chicago Motor Coach Company.
What's that?
It was actually a separate bus company in the city of Chicago. And then they had the Chicago Transit Authority, which of course was a government entity, and they took over all the bus lines. And my dad, who had finally gotten out of split shifts and crummy work hours and that, and when they brought in the CTA, they merged the seniority, and he went right to the bottom. And he didn't stay there very long after that. He left.
He was in a union when he was with...
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And he was a union at Jewel Food, too. He was a Teamster.
Okay. And was he an amalgamated transit worker? What do you know what union? Okay.
That was in the 40s, so I don't recall any of that.
Okay. What do you remember hearing about the unions when you were growing up?
Not really a lot. And there was no complaints, and there was no, he wasn't a positive, a goer or a mover on that. He was a worker. I really got indoctrinated in the unions when I went to TWA. A fellow named Don Burnson was a mechanic out there. He was also the committee chairman, a union Grievance Committee chairman, I'll call him that. And he would approach every new employee there and tell them what their responsibilities were to TWA. And after a 90-day probationary period, you had to join a union. It was a union security clause. And after my probation, because he told me during the probation, don't get involved in anything. Just do your work and come to work every day. That was another big thing. He always preached on people about coming to work, because he says we negotiated sick pay for when you're sick, not to take a day off. And after my probationary period, he started asking me if I wanted to be a steward for the ramp group, and that was all the guys. And most of those younger groups were never organized very well, and they'd show up to work, and then if it got cold, they'd go home and quit. That kind of thing.
Does it ever get cold in Chicago?
How about 20 below?
That's what I thought.
20 below. In fact, our worst place assignment out there at O'Hare, even today, please don't send me to gate 12. The wind blew through it. You'd have to put on 2 and 3 uniforms. Oh, it was, especially if you're on night shift or midnights. Oh.
As a Southerner, I'll politely decline.
Yeah, well, I can understand. I can understand.
Well, let's get back back to school.
Okay.
So tell me about going to school in Oak Park.
Well, that was the hospital. I didn't live in Oak Park. That was just where I was born.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry. Then where did you grow up?
I grew up in Chicago. First 9 years of my life. Montrose and Elston in the city. Went to grade school there. In 1951, end of the year, my parents bought a house, what they called a shell house. You could actually buy a house that wasn't finished. And you had to put in the electric and gas and water and drywall and all. Everything else was done on the house. And they finished the house. And I went to Roy School, which was a grade school in North Lake, Illinois. Upon graduation from grade school, I went to high school, Leiden High School. And it was a giant high school out there at that time. People from the western edge of Cook County all the way to Elmwood Park, Illinois went to that school.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Did they offer... I'm sorry. Continue.
And I went there for 4 years and graduated. So.
Did they offer vocational classes?
Yes, they did. Yeah.
Did you take
advantage
of those?
Yeah, okay. Welding and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm,
Sure.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, what was expected? I mean, were there any particular expectations put on you for what you were gonna do after?
Not
high
really.
School?
No. It was, 50s were. I don't know how you can explain it. The 50s were really different. You know, you made your own. If you went out and worked hard, or worked a lot of hours or whatever, you made some money and you moved ahead like that.
Mm-hmm.
When I got hired on with TWA, I was hired at Midway, but that was at that time TWA was operating mainly out of Midway Airport.
Mm-hmm.
And I was hired for O'Hare Airport, which in 1961, I think we had 18 flights a day. That was it, over a 24-hour period. And I basically promoted myself from a ramp serviceman or a cargo agent. They call us cargo agents, ramp service. But then I was a crew chief, and I ran a crew out there. And then I stayed on as a steward the whole time. And then in the late 60s, I ran for a Grievance Committee.
Okay.
And it was a 3-person committee. And we would try to settle problems that the stewards couldn't settle, or meet with the company to address different issues of that safety or whatever the issue was.
Mm-hmm.
It was a pretty dangerous place out there. We had people killed.
Dangerous in terms of...
Killed on the job. Oh, yeah.
Oh, so you mean a lack of safety, a good safety on the job?
Well,
or was it like personal violence?
Things happened. I don't want to get too graphic, but we had a guy on a 747. So now this is, 70, 71?
Mm-hmm.
And when the mechanics can tell you more about it, but they would turn off the hydraulic pressure on these aircraft once they parked in a gate. And I guess one of the flights they forgot to do that. Well, the first thing the mechanic would do is he'd come out and hook up power and all that, and there was a switch up in the nose gear, and you'd pull that and the doors would loosen up.
Mm-hmm.
He'd pull that and they went boom, and that was the end of him. And stuff like that. Guys get caught between trucks. Somebody not know there was a guy there checking something, roll him out the other side. We had another guy smoking on the truck, and he crazy stuff.
So it sounds like there weren't safety precautions in place or enforced
Well,
that it was.
it was an awareness thing where, as I'll give you a great example.
Mm-hmm.
Until they finally got hit with an industrial claim for hearing loss, there was no requirements even to have earplugs. And finally they went because of there was damage to ear, because the jet turbines, you can't hear it, but it's destroying your ears.
Mm-hmm.
And they finally had to put signs on every outgoing door. Do not go into this area without hearing protection and that. That stuff, as they became aware of it, they changed all that.
So do you think the company was reluctant to?
I just think they all worked like that. I don't think any airline out there at that time. You got to remember the airlines until, when was it? Jimmy Carter deregulated it in '79. Before that, they pretty much were their own, own business, do whatever they wanted to do. They'd rent space at an airport and fly. Mm-hmm. I can remember Continental Airlines couldn't get a gate or a ticket counter, so they had a card table set up in a hallway. And they sold tickets off of a card table.
Okay.
I mean, it's crazy stuff.
Okay.
The first O'Hare Airport was really a military base. And all airlines, we have what they call a bag chute. And it was one of these chutes that comes down like this, all metal, like something you'd find on a farm almost. And the bags would come down a chute from all the airlines. And you had to have a guy from each airline. Oh, that's a TWA bag, and you'd grab it. Oh, that's a United bag. And then as things kept getting bigger and bigger, and that's when it started turning into more safety conscious, problems like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and of course, we got more organized.
Right.
And we would spot potential problems or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it got better. I don't think they did anything intentionally,
Right.
Plus, with the young guys out there, I saw things that you just shouldn't see. Mm-hmm. Guy come flying up in a Jeep, jam on the brake. We had actual Jeeps out there. Mm-hmm. Jam on the brakes and the thing flipped over. Everybody ran over and just picked the Jeep up, and the guy got out and walked away. Stuff like that. So that you can't blame the company for that. But
right.
It was a young group of people, mm-hmm. and that's what they wanted was young people. And they really, in the lower groups, when I say lower, I mean not the skilled mechanics mm-hmm. and avionics technicians and LSTs, which are all things that we came up with later on in contracts. If they quit, they didn't care to hire somebody else. So 71 was about the breaking point with TWA that they were going to be an airline and we were going to get paid a decent wage, mm-hmm. and it went pretty good from there.
Do you think that the issues that you had in Chicago mirrored issues at other terminals, at other TWA?
Do you think the same thing happened, you mean?
Yeah. Do you think that it was?
Well, in the 60s, I couldn't tell you that because I basically worked at O'Hare, and I would fly to these other places, mm-hmm. but more on a vacation type of thing. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. As I got into being a general chairman, mm-hmm. now you're on assignment, and if you flew into Phoenix, you'd go down and you'd talk to the people, right, and when we finally got the the passenger service agents in the union, I mean, almost anybody you saw that worked for the airline, if they wanted to talk to you or you wanted to talk to them, there they were, Mm-hmm. And you could go anywhere. I can go on any airport, where my people were at, and house things, this, and I'd go to a union meeting. Usually that's how you'd schedule in. I'd meet with their local grievance committees if they had safety problems or whatever whatever they wanted to talk about. Mm-hmm. Meet with the manager, talk about local issues. that's when you would notice other things at other airports and that. And by that time, we pretty much had things going pretty good. You know, I mean, if we came up with a safety issue and that, they'd take a look at it and, you know, get on it. So it was near the end that things got crazy because, you know, some of the people Icon hired were just
We'll get to Icon.
nuts.
Well, yeah.
They were nuts.
So you started in ramp service in 1961. Can you describe the work of someone who works in ramp service for people who might not know?
Okay, ramp servicemen. There's different areas and different departments. You could work in baggage service, where you would be in a bag room where the bags would come down, and you'd put them on carts to go to the whatever flight they were. If you worked in commissary, was a special department, and all they did was service meals on the aircraft, top-offs, stuff like that, and liquor, which was a big deal at that day. You had ground service, which eventually merged with ram service, and they were all fuelers. And at that time, we had tank cars, trucks that would come out, and you'd pump out of the truck right into the airplane. On a piston aircraft, it was gasoline, and on jets it was fuel oil or JP fuel or whatever they called it, JP5 I think. They did that, and we had crew car drivers. They would drive the crews from the hangars. All the crews would park at the hangars, and they would drive them down to the terminals and back and forth, or workers that had to go back and forth. It was like a bus service.
Right.
And we had 3 or 4 crew car drivers.
So did y'all still have the thing where you would roll the staircase out to the...
That at the start was the agents, the passenger service, and they were not union at that time.
Okay.
They didn't get union till later on. But some of them were motorized, some of them were not. But the passenger service usually did that.
Okay.
And we did all the ground handling. And
so essentially anything to help that plane get ready for its next
departure,
flight.
right.
Okay.
And you had to unload it when it came in.
Okay.
And you had to make sure the bags that were going to O'Hare or your station went to O'Hare and didn't go on to the next place, which could have been Kansas City, Wichita, Vegas. They had mail. That was the other thing. REA was, do you remember REA? Railway Express?
No, I don't remember REA.
That was a big company.
Okay.
And they had handled freight.
Was it
mostly small packages and that. They went out of business.
Are they sort of like a precursor for UPS or something?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Railway Express was a giant corporation.
Okay.
I think it even went back to the days of the stagecoaches and that.
Okay.
So it was an old time thing. And you had the cargo operation. And freight would come in from freight forwarders or customers. And the guys would, weigh the stuff, and they'd give it to an agent, and he'd figure out what the rate was by size, much like what the post office does with an envelope. And they'd haul that down, and they had to make sure it got on the right flight. You didn't want to send Baltimore freight to L.A., so that was the things they had to do. So there's a lot of different departments just in the ramp service end of it.
Okay. And was it a closed shop? Did you have to join the union?
Oh, yeah, it was union security.
Oh, that's right. You mentioned
union
that earlier.
Security, 90 days, and you had to join. And we didn't get much, you didn't have many people say, I don't want to join, or this or that. It just, everybody was, and we participated. Some people were just there, and other people were more active in, like the calling of overtime. The company found out it was easy for the stewards to call the overtime. And the supervisor would tell them, I need 5 guys for 4 hours. They'd tell the steward. Because if the supervisor did it and he got the wrong guys, the guys that were right, the next guys up, they'd come in and go afterwards. They'd wait. And they'd say, okay, now pay me. So they said, okay, you guys do it. They never had a problem after that. So, because even if we missed somebody, it was too bad, we forgot you. We'll get you next time.
Right.
So, there was a lot of different things in it that, at the end, before we closed down and went to American, we had no supervisors and no manager. And when American came over, they used to come around with an army of people, with their notepads and that. Say, where's your supervisor? Oh, we don't have one. What about your manager? Oh, we haven't seen him in months. And they go, who opens the building? He says, we do. Who closes it? We do. Who runs it all day? We do. In fact, when they went over to American was so shocked because they were total control of their workforce. They put our people on one gate, just one gate, and said, everything that shows up there, you handle it. They had that much respect for it. So, anyhow.
Well, let's go back to when you started.
Okay.
You keep getting far ahead, and I'm going to keep pulling us back
That's
a little bit.
okay. I don't have a problem with that. You're running the interview.
So you had to join the union, but I see that it just took you about a year to become a steward. So why was it that important to you to become involved with the union so soon?
Well, they wanted you to. I was in touch with, like I said, Don Burnson, and there was Andy and Tisdale and Pete Carlson were committee guys. They were all mechanics. The mechanics, because they stayed. They were hired. Let's see, when I started in '61, them guys came back from World War II, and because they were in they PBYs in Pacific, or what those float boats, whatever like that.
Okay.
Only they were military, and they hired on with the airlines, so they stayed. Whereas the ramp guys, they got PO'd, they left. I was always active in there, but I was told not for the first 3 months. Don't do anything because all they got to do is bang and you're gone. And I just put down for a date, but I was pretty active right from the start. So.
What were some of the issues brought to you as steward while you were?
Some of it was overtime issues. Others were, this guy's bothering me about this or that. Sometimes squabbles between different guys and that. It was not a real severe situation where they cracked the whip. And later on, as a steward, though, I filed grievances on different work assignments that they had given to other people. We said, hey, that's our job. And some of it went to arbitration, and we won. One of them I think about was what they call next flight out. A person could show up at the air freight terminal, say, I've got this package, it's got to be in Cleveland tomorrow. Guy would take it. Next Cleveland flight going there, went right on the airplane. So it got there,
Would you say that the company worked pretty well with the union? With members overall? Or can you describe?
I didn't have a problem. I didn't have a problem. Some people were on the edge. They always had a problem in that. But I can remember the first time we went on strike, and it was actually the airline strike. I'm going to say 1966. And it was the great, I don't know if you've ever heard this, the great airline strike. Yeah. Okay. And I came out on the property and told everybody if it's not settled by, it was 6 a.m. in the morning or something, we're on strike. And they tried to tell me that I couldn't come out there because I wasn't on the job and this and that. And I go, hey, do whatever you want to do, but unless I get a phone call in the next half hour, this place is shutting down. And we shut it down.
And what was that like? Because that would have been your first strike. Was that your first strike?
Yeah.
What was that experience like going through your first strike?
It would, for the young guys, it was like a game almost. people that had responsibility. Myself, I went out and had 3 jobs to make up, so I had money, but I also had to do my picket duty, and I was a picket captain, so I had to make sure my groups, and I would go around the field and make sure they were at their picket positions. But I worked other jobs to supplement, my income and that, so I didn't.
How long was that strike?
6 weeks.
That's a good long time.
Went 6 weeks.
Did your local have a strike fund?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you remember how much?
It was hardly anything. I don't remember exactly what it was. I'm sure a local could tell you that, or even Bob could tell you. But it was just a sum of money so you don't starve to death. It's because it was a self-inflicted wound. You went out on strike and you caused the stoppage. So, but after that, the government they advised us that will never ever happen again. Because I can remember, I should have saved some of these articles, but I'd read them and laugh. Where a congressman wanted to go back and say his district was Utah, and it would take him 3 days to get back to Utah because he'd have to fly here and then over here and then get a bus over here and then, it was shut down. And when we had our ratification votes and meetings, we had them on the football field of a local high school.
Really?
Everybody in the airport was at the place.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
And they had to have a ballot, and they had to have a copy of what the changes were and all that. And I hate to say it, but I think we went back for like 1.5% or something like. It was just something, But that's when what's his name, Johnson, wanted to put price controls and wage freezes and all that kind of stuff in there. So the politics were involved.
Do you remember during the strike how the Grand Lodge communicated to locals? I mean, I assume it would have come through the district, but do you remember what the communication system was like to get info to the membership?
Well, I know the International was involved because we saw them. In fact, we had a vice president had an office in our local. And the districts pretty much handled all the negotiations on stuff like that. So, and each one would compare what they wanted. In other words, if they all decided that it was going to be 1.5%, they all had agreed. Okay, we got that on the side. Now let's go to this. And then we did separate issues that maybe were a problem on TWA, but not on United. And there was no crying and moaning that, gee, nobody told us nothing, or where are these people, aren't they here? And we didn't have any of that stuff, because I think the people we were involved in, and including this district, we made sure the people knew what was going on. And they saw us out there too, If a guy only had a 4-hour picket duty, they knew that we'd be out there and around, and we'd check them all off, make sure they were there, and so they'd get their picket pay. So there wasn't a lot of crying and moaning about it, though.
Okay.
I mean, guys were happy to go back to work, but it's one of the things of life.
Yeah. So in 1968, you were you elected to the Agreement Committee, or were you appointed to the agreement?
I was elected.
You were elected.
Oh, yeah.
So within your local people already started to get to know who you were?
Oh, after that many years, sure.
Yeah. And
I was a steward for, 6-7 years already, so.
Were you, did you run on a slate, or did you run individually?
I ran individually.
Okay.
Actually, and he's deceased. He's been dead many, many years. A fellow named Tim Cotter. He was from the old side. And him and I worked together. And he was maybe 20 years older than I was. But he was like one of them guys from the IRA, okay? And he had dealt with the English system over there in the UK. And we would talk about different things and what we had to do. And and keep things going and that. And we decided that all 3 mechanics, they should have a ramp person on the committee. And I told him, well, you'd be the better guy for it. And he got sick with cancer and eventually passed away. I ran for the position and I won. And I stayed on until 76, when the district came and asked me if I would like to run for a position on the district staff, which to me was a great honor, because we had stations all over the United States, and I think at the time, I can show you maybe a picture out there, there was maybe 6 or 8 general chairmen for the whole country. And I'll give you a little story on that. Me and the wife were going out on vacation, and I walked into one of the guys who was Kansas City based, Alex Bay, who happened to also end up as an international rep, a general vice president, okay, and he was assigned to the Midwestern territories for a while, who also had an office in Local 1487. And I thought, I'm going, excuse the language, what the hell is he doing here in Chicago? He don't have his station. I knew he was a general chairman. And he says, where are you going? I said, well, I'm getting on an airplane. We're going on vacation. He says, oh, well, he says, I'll see you the next time. I'm going, see me the next time. And we got on the airplane and left. He came back the next time. He says, here's what we'd like, we'd like to have you on our team. And I ran for the position with the support of the members here. Yeah. And I won.
Well, the agreement committee was just for your local though, right?
Right.
And how many?
And just for TWA.
And just for TWA. So did your local represent workers at other airlines or did your...
The local did, yes. The general chairman handled all them. Okay. Like Butler Aviation, Lockheed, Air Transport, Signature, ASI, fixed base operators, that's what they call them. And then even a lot of the foreign carriers, Swiss Air, Mexicana, Aeronavis de Mexico, they were all handled by the general chairman, who was assigned to O'Hare. Okay. But he might have been assigned to 5 other cities too. So they had a lot of work. We basically handled TWA only. Okay. So then when I went to general chairman, they gave me an assignment, and I had places like Columbus and Philadelphia, Vegas, LA. They had me all over the country. And mainly it was a test. If you could put up with this crap for a while, Yeah. And I did a good job at it. So I got elected 7 times, the 4-year terms.
Wow. Well, let's go back to the agreement committee.
Okay.
What was the work of the agreement committee? Once you were elected, what were you doing?
1 day a week, we had negotiated locally, 1 day a week that we would be Union Day. And we would walk around the whole field, TWA, because you had the hangar, you had the gates where the aircraft are at, you had the bag room, you had commissary and air freight. And we'd go to all them different areas walking around, and people saw us visible or do you have a problem? They didn't. We'd go back to the office or we'd type grievance forms or whatever. Usually meet with management if they, maybe they had something they wanted to complain about.
Would you say most of the time you had success, sort of if somebody had a problem, if y'all could take it directly to management, you could avoid the grievance process altogether?
The stewards would do that.
Okay, so
the stewards would sit down with a shift supervisor or a manager on duty and say, listen, you did this and that. And if they couldn't get it, they'd go to grievance form. And maybe it might have been something that we didn't have enough help on Tuesday, so all the agent supervisors were out loading the airplane. You know, of course, we're looking to get more people working, hired on and that, and we'd have grievances. And they would make pay awards, but they would not be like Supreme Court decisions, you know. Okay, here's 4 hours, give it to whoever you want to give it to, and, you know, it won't happen again till the next time, so. But that's basically what Grievance Committee did.
So you were elected to the Agreement Committee in 68.
69, 70, 71.
Did you only serve one term on there before going on to trustee?
The trustee was a local lodge function.
Okay.
Had nothing to do with grievance committees or
Okay.
It was politics inside the local lodge, and you had your president, vice president, trustees. There was a board. That's what they call the board. Recording secretary or financial secretary, and you would meet prior to every union meeting, and you know you'd go over the bills of the local. Communications from the different districts, because don't forget at that time you had 141, 142, 143, 145, 146. I think there was even a 147. And they basically represented whatever group they had. I think I'm going to say 143 was basically Northwest and Eastern. I don't recall that closely anymore. What 141 was United. Some of them that represented like Texas Air and places like that but most of them were amalgamated into districts, and we ended up with a lot of those districts because I'll be very vocal about it. Our district was very good at what they did. They knew how to get in and handle problems, and they would give us the assignments. So we picked up all these, you know, little foreign flag carriers, fixed base operators, different things like that. In fact, back in the 60s, I think the Grand Lodge reps handled like Lockheed Air Terminal, Butler Aviation, Allied Aviation. They were all what we call fixed base operators. And the international guy did that. Well, they figured it was cheaper to have us do it than them. And so they would assign them to different areas or other jobs, but we ended up picking up all the work. So.
Okay. And so you were trustee for 9 years?
Yeah.
Did you enjoy that work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It kept me involved with the local, and I went to every meeting anyhow. So what was it? You know, what was the difference?
So at that point, were you out of the terminal and only working at the union, or did you still have your job?
Until I went and the committee, the Grievance Committee, we finally got that changed to 3 days from 1 day. And then it went to full-time committee. And that's all you had to do is committee work. And I'd wander around on all the shifts. I'd be out on the midnight shift, the afternoon shift, different times. They'd know I was coming through, so if anybody wanted to see me, you know, they'd make themselves available. Many times I'd go out on a midnight shift and talk to my stewards, talk to the crews, and then they'd come up and gently tell me it's time for me to leave. And I'd go, what's up? He says, well, as soon as the flight leaves, we're going to bed. I said, okay, I got that message. And on I'd go, you know. But I had been out there I'd pick up half the afternoon shift and half the midnight shift because I knew that's what they were going to do, you know. So I didn't have to stay out there the whole shift and that. So little things like that were pretty funny, you know. And they tell you, get out of here, we don't want you here. It's okay. But trustee, all we did was basically check the bills, audits, stuff like that, to make sure that the place wasn't getting cleaned out.
Right.
But
and did I ask somebody about how many folks did you have in your local?
Oh my God!
In 1487.
I'm gonna just throw a number out, and Bob would probably give you much better numbers because he was a financial guy.
That came up yesterday.
I'm gonna say 6,000.
Really?
Oh yeah.
In local 1487.
Oh yeah. Well, you figure everybody that worked at a United Airlines, everybody that worked at TWA. Let's see, who Continental wasn't in the group at that time. Eastern was out there. Northwest was out there. Basically, the three. Well, American was in transportation workers. Delta was definitely non-union, and I think Continental was. I'm not sure who they were. I know we did an organizing campaign with them. And we never got Continental until the flight attendants finally came over to our group, which was later on.
So you were a trustee for about 9 years, and starting in 1976, that is when you were first elected to general chairman of District Lodge 142.
That's correct.
So tell me, because I know a good bit about the different positions in the union, but I, until this trip, had not really heard of a general chairman for a district. So, because I know that the structure's a little different depending on what kind of office you're in.
Depends on what district you were in. United called them assistant general chairmen.
Okay.
We were just general chairman, and our president, like Tom Higginbotham, who just left, or Dave Saplia now, is called a president general chair, PGC, president general chairman. What are you unplugging?
I'm not. I'm plugging. I'm looking.
Power, huh?
Yeah, it's running out. I think my batteries are low. So, and is there only one general chairman for a district, or there?
Oh no. I'll take you in and show you the pictures on the wall if
Okay.
you haven't seen them.
Okay.
When I started, there was between 6 and 9 of us. I don't recall exactly how many the number was because it changed as we got, like when Southwest came on. We put on 3 women for Southwest general chair people. When we took over the Continental flight attendants, they had all their own general chairmen for whether they were female or male. They were general chairman for Continental Airlines for the flight attendants.
How many general chairmen would you have? Like you said, you brought on 3 women for Southwest because there were so many.
Basically, it was all women working.
Basically, all okay.
Reservations, and if you remember the early days, do you remember? You probably don't remember the early days of Southwest. In fact, Southwest just finally started going into Atlanta
within the last couple of years
because they bought AirTran.
Right.
That's why they bought them. We were very close with people on Southwest.
Yeah.
I used to go into the stations, and I can tell the story because it was true. I said, you ladies, and that's my vernacular, you ladies are going to have to, get with us in that. They used to make them girls wear hot pants and T-shirts behind the ticket counter. And, I'd go in there and go, oh my God, I can't even, That's what it was. And it changed. And we got a lot of that, turned around in that. But, well, Ian in there, she's Southwest. She was a reservationist. I worked with her, well, I'll say in the 90s. She worked in reservations out there in the local lodge.
So, if a district, back to the example of the Southwest worker, the 3 women that were brought on as general chairman, was there like one general chairman for every X number of employees with that
They had
airline?
some kind of magic number that they would allow. The international would say you got to have 2,000 or whatever. They had to have dues coming in to supplant it.
Right.
But even though we put on 3, I still had like Chicago. I had reservations and passenger service.
For TWA specifically.
No, for Southwest.
Okay.
I was doing once I went to General Chairman, you are no longer just TWA.
Okay.
That might be your carrier.
Right.
But I did Southwest. I did Detroit. I had Detroit. I had Ozark in Cedar Rapids, in Des Moines, Milwaukee, Rockford. I mean, I just had tons of different things, and I drift around. The ones locally I drive to, like Rockford and Milwaukee, Cedar Rapids and Des Moines. I'd fly into one, and the 2 committee guys or whatever was there, and we'd drive up to Des Moines and go to the union meeting, and then I would get on one of the little tiny airplanes and fly back to Chicago, and it was a different time. There's no doubt about it.
So not only did that take you out of the terminal, but you started traveling a lot. I mean, both of those things happened
on the road
at the same time. How did that impact things at home? Because I imagine that was a real big.
Tough.
I imagine that was a real big change for your family.
Yeah, it was tough. We made sure that I was always there for the weekends, no matter what, and we never missed a vacation. I didn't care what the earth could be crumbling, and that if we had something scheduled. And my kids got to see places that they would have never seen. I had them to England, to the Tower of London. They've been to Hawaii. They've been Disneyland, Disney World. Canada, Mexico, and I made sure that No, you saw my daughter calls me at 9 o'clock every morning to find out how I'm doing.
Oh.
So.
Good.
And Marietta from Myron is on 101.
That must be the paging system
Yes.
for the whole building.
And that hasn't happened at all this week, so I feel like that is a...
Well, the phones were out. Did you know that?
When? This morning?
No.
Oh.
I called in here the day before yesterday. I had to call Bob to get me a hotel reservation. I said, Bob, I called the district office, and I says, all the numbers are busy. I said, even the secret number. We had a secret number that didn't rotate. See, the phones would go like 46, 47, 48, and they sequence. If the first one was busy, you would jump to the second.
Okay.
But we had a secret one that never jumped to, and if all the phones were busy, we could call that number and say, hey, I got to talk to somebody.
Okay. It's not a secret anymore.
Well, you don't know the number.
I don't know. You're right. Okay. I know that it exists. I don't know what it is. Okay.
And I called Bob. I says, all the phones are out. He says, I'm going over there. I'll let you know. I'll call you back. He says, yeah, all the phones went out. I said, I know. That's what I told you. But he made me a reservation and that. And then, listen to this. This is an aside. I call him, and his phone went right to the mailbox. So I said, well, I'll text him. Like, what's my number to get into the hotel? I was at the hotel, and the text comes up. And he tells me, oh, I'm sorry, I went to the interview, and I turned my phone off. I go,
well, we like you to turn the phone off during an interview, so it doesn't.
Mine ain't gonna ring, but I'll turn it off.
Okay. I usually just silence mine.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
That's all.
Okay. But we can't control the intercom, which is
No.
fine. It's a minimal interruption. So, well, let's get back to the interview.
Okay.
So what did you do when you were traveling around to all these places? Like, what would, and you went in, what were you at that local to do, to find out, to work with those people?
Okay. First thing you had to do, you had to really get a relationship. Because I went to places I never, went
Did you ever meet any resistance from folks?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah. But non-union folks.
Aha.
And I'll give you an aside on that later, but you would go in, and guys that I might have met at conventions. See, now, I've been going to conventions, like after the first year,
Grand Lodge convention specifically?
No, district conventions.
Okay.
I went to Grand Lodge. In fact, I'm going to say 68 or 72. I'm not sure which one. We always had conventions during the political election years. So they would get all their whatever they were going to do. Okay? And I would meet these different guys from different locations. And because you were from Chicago, they'd want to talk to you about your problems and this and that. And you had to build a relationship with these. If you couldn't get along with the people in the station, the best thing you could do is go back to your boss, the PGC, and in my case, Quentin Kerr, and say, Quentin, these guys are just, I had guys that were so terrible that, I don't want to put that on recording, that another employee, they didn't want him as steward, even though he got elected, because of his color. And I told the guy, I says, you're talking to the wrong guy about that. If he's your steward, he's your steward. So
right.
You got a problem, or if you want to talk to me, fine, but that's where you run your stuff through. Mm-hmm. But that was the only case I had like that.
Well, and what kind of support did you get, or now that we're talking about issues of race in the workplace, what kind of support was there within the union? I mean, did everybody pretty much walk the line of, if this person has been elected, then they're the person that clearly most of the membership want in this position, so deal with it and go through them? I mean, there
was people that were definitely anti-union, but they just stay quiet or they wouldn't get involved.
I don't mean anti-union, I mean racist.
I mean company. Oh, race?
Yeah.
Oh no, I don't think we had. That was the only one, and that one shocked me.
Yeah.
I came from Chicago. My God, half the guys on the ship were black or from some country. Mm-hmm. In fact, during the Mariel boat thing with Cuba.
Okay.
You might not know what I'm talking about.
I might not, no.
Okay, this is when Fidel allowed Cubanos, to leave Cuba.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But you, as a family member in the States, had to come and get them.
Okay.
And when you took Grandma, 5 convicts went on the boat with them. And they were shipped to the country.
Okay.
Most of them ended up right in jails.
Right.
But, some of them were killers and everything. Mm. But I had to deal with those people, and I'll just call them Hispanic, because they were from every country: Peru, Colombia, Cuba, Puerto Rico.
Mm-hmm.
And they come to me, and they were just, they were going down to they wanted to get their relatives out of there. In the 60s and 70s, that was, a big issue. And they were besides themselves. They would sell their house so they could buy a boat, that kind of crap. And I worked out a deal in Chicago. I don't know what anybody else did or if anybody else had a problem in Chicago, that those guys that wanted to get off to go rescue a relative, we got them off the clock without using if they wanted to use vacation or what, they couldn't use sick time. And we didn't want them to just go unauthorized. So
right.
And they loved us for that after that, I mean, the guy from Cuba would be talking to the Puerto Rican, hey, these guys are okay. So.
Yeah. So you had real diversity in the workplace. Because I was talking to some of the folks about here in Kansas City, and it seemed like it was mostly white with a few blacks, and then not much else.
Kansas City.
Yeah, in terms
probably reflected
exactly
the skill levels and stuff like that.
Well, also the local population in general. Okay.
In
That's
Chicago,
though,
we
very
had,
diverse.
We had, and just so you don't get the wrong idea, we had bad white guys out there. When I mean bad, and we had bad black guys that were out there. And the black guys would tell you, this guy's don't shoot dice with him, or don't play cards with him. Some of the white guys would say, don't go out drinking with them guys, because you're liable to get killed when they'll go over and hit some guy over the head with a beer bottle. Right. Oh, it's crazy.
So just folks looking for trouble in general.
Well, they were just bad people.
Yeah.
And they weeded them out. I had one guy, I had a father call me up one day, and he didn't know that I got tuned in on everything. And he says, yeah, my kid can't get into work in that. He's got a problem in that. And can you get him off on authorized leave? I says, well, I have to know what he's off for. I already knew. These two guys, both ramp guys, both white guys, robbed a Japanese key club.
What's a key club?
Private Japanese club.
Okay.
And if you weren't Japanese and you didn't have a key, you didn't get into the club.
Okay.
He robbed the place. What had happened, in typical fashion, they're driving away and the taillights are out on their car. Cops stop them for taillight, and there's a gun and a mask and a bag full of money sitting in the back seat. They went right to jail.
Right. Of course.
And the father is trying to get his kid so he don't get fired. But I already knew the story, so I said, well, give me the rest of the story and then we'll talk about it. And I never heard from them again because they went to jail. You know.
They expected the union to bail out their kid for...
Get him off on sick leave. That's why he didn't come to work.
Oh.
You know, I put them down just like those that I did for Mariel boat people. They were all worked out by name. This guy's going here. Now, if he don't come back, by this date, he's gone.
Right, right.
So, oh yeah, we got involved in almost everything out there. You know.
Chicago really does reflect a different kind of, I guess, big city action that Kansas City.
Let me tell you.
And I don't mean to just always compare the two, but just for this trip, doing these interviews, talking to you, I'm hearing about very different experiences.
Oh, absolutely. I got to tell Bob when I was coming in here. I says, Bob, I couldn't find my way to the district office. It's changed so much. The roads are here and bridges over here and this and that. And I'm going, it's not the same. Well, I haven't worked in 15 years. That's, across the street, that used to be all low-income housing. Look at it over there.
That's what I heard.
This place right next door is a used car lot. Used to be a barbecue place. And I mean, we'd go over there for lunch, and they had the big ovens and the old Kansas City type barbecue joint. So, anyhow, yeah, you're right. It's very different. Also, don't forget for the '60s, that was Vietnam, and I had guys coming back from there that were. I'll give you a good example. I was told that what they bought over in Saigon cost $4, but when they bought it here, it was $400, and they were.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. And
they were drug addicts, and they would just one day they just wouldn't come to work and they'd be dead. Had another black man, and I asked another black man. I said, "Geez, I noticed Raj over there all his teeth are falling out." And the guy just looked at me. He says, "It's stuff he's doing." I didn't have to ask any more questions. The guy would walk around and live on candy bars. He was injecting stuff and that. And he was a lead man too. But little by little that filtered out,
Yeah.
But it was a different experience. During the riots, you've heard of the riots in '68. During the riots, in my locker room, there were guys that were dressing up to go down to the military for the National Guard, putting on their uniforms, taking their helmets and all that stuff, pick up their guns down there. Then we had the other, what I call the freaks, wearing all the weird shit. And they'd be down there like this at night, come back the next day and be at work working with each other.
Yeah.
I'm going, something messed up about this place, But it was,
that must have been an interesting dynamic.
Oh, it was awesome.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
I would have liked to have been a fly on that wall.
Oh yeah. And we had to keep it going in that.
And within the union, all these folks were organized, and the union just sort of, I guess, was like, whatever you're doing away from work is your business, but leave it there when you.
Oh yeah. Well, some of the stuff you couldn't. like we got involved with the alcohol programs. And there was certain guys, and I took the responsibility. If they didn't show up for work, I'd get a phone call. Didn't matter when it was, I'd get a phone call. And I'd hear all kinds of stories from alcoholics why they couldn't make it to work that day. And one of the sad cases, when I went to his house, I opened up his refrigerator and there was a 6-pack of beer and a stick of butter. That was it. Another guy working a midnight shift, and he called in sick, and my steward on the midnight shift called me up and said, "Oh, the guy no-showed." I says, "Call him right back. Tell him you don't care what happened. Tell him to get his ass to work, or he's going to get fired." He had told the steward that he was in a major accident and totaled his car. So he pulls up and he's driving the car. And the steward says, "What happened? There's nothing wrong with your car." But we saved him from getting fired.
Yeah.
Because he was going to go off on a binge, and that's some of the stuff we were involved in.
Right.
Wasn't just, rah and fight.
So it sounds like for where you were, that it wasn't just maybe worrying about what the company was going to do, but you were kind of managing all of these
You had to.
in-house issues
Yeah.
to.
And by the time I left, we had, in fact, I kept them almost till the end. I had 2 full-time committeemen in an office, just helping with the transition over and out, because we're going to American, we were known. So you would visit all the different
locals as general chairman of District 142.
Yeah.
So when you weren't managing all these personal problems.
Well, see, that was a little different, okay?
Okay.
Most of the other stuff was committee work.
Okay.
When you went out to another station, you handled whatever they told you about.
Okay.
But some of that stuff I was talking about with, with alcohol and drugs, and that was Chicago, and I was a committee man, and I was there 40 hours or whatever it was a week that I was supposed to be there. But general chairman, there was times I leave on Monday, come home on Friday, and I'd been through different, especially if I had negotiations.
So you would go and help with negotiations.
Well, I'm the negotiator.
So were you kind of like, is the general chairman kind of like
Marshall Dillon?
Well, but like a version of maybe a special rep, or
Yeah. Oh yeah.
except at the district level.
Yeah, we did it more than anything.
Because you get, you're just kind of there to facilitate whatever might be going on at any particular.
Yeah.
To give the people there the tools they need. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be putting words in your mouth. I'm just really trying to understand exactly.
Well, I know it's tough for people to understand all that kind of organization. But
yeah.
The separation, once you left committees, local committees, every station had somebody, whether they were full-time or not. A place like Dayton, Ohio did not have a full-time committeeman, but they had a committeeman. And the stewards he'd go around and talk to the stewards, and then when I'd come in, he'd talk to me. And they would give you whatever their situation was. But even Ian can tell you some of the stuff from her local in Albuquerque. There was power struggles over this group and that group, and they're going to save money, so they moved out of the local that they were, an amalgamated local that they were in, and they moved to some Howard Johnson, a room like this, which nobody would show up to, and they'd be fighting over that kind of stuff, and you had to keep,
So it really could be just anything that they're dealing with at a local level that you have to.
Look, another good example, Los Angeles had a full-time committee there, but the president of the local was a different political group than the committee. Okay? And I would go to the meetings, and if we were in negotiations, they'd always put you up on stage, and you got free fire questions, whatever they want to ask. Well, a lot of times I had talked to everybody on the property already, so they knew the answers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the president, he wanted to show how good he was, and he'd come up and stand next to me and pass the microphone back and forth. He'd ask a question, give me the microphone. I'd answer it. He'd take the thing and ask another question. And I'm looking at my committee in the back of the room, and they're all, they're doing one of these. But it was, I could handle it, so I didn't care.
Yeah. Yeah. So did you, because you said you did that from 76 to 2001.
Yeah.
So you did that for about 25 years.
25 years.
So did you see, well, I'm sure did you see a reduction in membership over time because of a reduction in jobs? Because airline may be different than other industries or other work.
I think as they started shutting down at the end, I don't want to jump right to the end,
Mm-hmm.
but as they started shutting down, of course there was layoffs. They didn't. I really got hurt badly in Chicago because they only wanted the overhaul base, Kansas City, but we did what they call a check C, and different checks on aircraft that have to be checked every so often. Well, when they started pulling my specialists out, I had 5 of the highest rated mechanics on TWA, and they're called LSTs, lead system technicians. And if somebody said, I got a problem with the electrical system on this airplane, they'd come out there, okay, it's this problem here, and they'd fix it. That's how good they were.
Mm-hmm.
Or a hydraulic guy, or an engine guy, avionics guy. They were all specialists. And as they started taking them away and bringing them down here and moving them around, my group started shrinking in that. And then, of course, they sold the hangar. He ain't got much work then.
Mm-hmm.
So I saw it like that, yeah. Honestly, the 60s and the 70s and the early part of the 80s, to me, were the golden years of TWA or airlines. There was a time in the 60s, sometimes every 2 months I'd see a brand new airplane come pulling in. And there's nothing more beautiful than it's like a brand new car. And you look
like
at
a brand new
scratches on it.
Like not just new, but a brand new model.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. It could be, you can get an 880 out there or 720B. Then when they started going into the big ones, the 747. That was, we'd go out on the airplane and just go, oh my God, And the equipment that came with it, there was containers. You maybe get 2 containers in this whole room, and they had machinery that would put them up. They call them igloos, and they go on hydraulically and shove them on the airplane. That was underneath the passenger. Passengers didn't even know. Some of it was bags, a lot of it was freight and other parts and that. And seeing new aircraft and different DC-9s, I hated the DC-9, but
why did you hate it?
it was a noisy airplane. I had to fly on Ozark a lot when I was a general chairman, and they had the smallest DC-9s there ever was, a DC-930, I think they called it. And they couldn't synchronize the motors. So you'd be flying down to St. Louis and you'd hear, they were all working, but that's what you heard in the airplane. And you go, oh.
That sounds terrible.
And then propeller airplanes they had, the gears fell out of the wings. And I'd be sitting there, and they had big oval windows, and I'd be sitting there and I'd be waiting and that, and the gear, boom, and he dropped down, people would jump in their seats. A lot of that stuff, but it was a great time for a young guy.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah.
I think I was so enthusiastic. That's why I just loved it.
Well, from 76 to 2001, while you were general chairman, did you see a change in like an overall change in what issues were in all the places you visited?
Yeah. That's when most of the foreign flags wanted to get rid of their employees, or at least their union
When you say
employees.
foreign flags, you mean?
Any carrier that's not from the United States.
Okay.
Mexicana, Aeronavis de Mexico,
Mm-hmm.
Swiss Air.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there's others that I could look on that sheet and I could tell you what they are.
Mm-hmm.
And they would come out with proposals in contract negotiations. And instead of say, okay, here's your proposals that you want to change the contract. Here's our proposal. We're going to give every employee $50,000. Guess what they took?
Yeah.
One lady, a Joe Nisiak, at the end she worked for Mexicana Airlines.
Mm-hmm.
She was my steward.
Mm-hmm.
She had been bailed out 2 or 3 times. She worked for Braniff. You probably never heard
I have heard
that.
of Braniff.
Okay,
yeah.
Braniff.
Mm.
They went bankrupt or whatever, and she got bailed out, and she got a job with Mexicana. She was Hispanic. Her husband was not, but she was bilingual, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And she was a very, very strong woman. She didn't have any problem telling any of them guys over there to hit it.
Yeah.
And at the end, she told me, she says, Harold, I'm sorry we got to do this, but, based on seniority, some of these people are going to get $100,000.
Mm.
They never saw $100,000 in their life. I go, I understand. And that's what happened to most of them. Foreign flags was the worst. But then look what happened. You lost Eastern, lost Northwest, all Lake Central, North Central. Ozark was grabbed by TWA, of course. Mm-hmm. Pacific, PSA it was called. Southwest grabbed a lot of little Texas Air. Mm-hmm. There was another one out of Morris Air. I know you never heard of it. They're little, but they had a res center and stuff like that. And they all started doing this, going together, and grabbed the market. In fact, TWA bought Ozark just to knock the competition off. They wanted St. Louis, and there was a period of time before '86 when Ozark and TWA were both running the same. I could have come down to St. Louis any half hour on the half hour.
Really?
Just go out there and say, what's the next flight going to St. Louis? 8 minutes. Okay, I'll get on that one. Off I go.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, there's Jimmy Carter, who I will never like, although he's from your state.
A lot of people in my state don't like Jimmy Carter. So.
He deregulated the airline industry, and I never forgave him for that, because that was the end of the airline industry. Mm-hmm. Now, when I hear people, God damn, they got us working like animals inside these 6 across seatings and all, and I go, thank you, Jimmy Carter. Mm. And most of them all, they give all the BS about, well, these new carriers are going to hire more people in the industry. Every one of them new carriers went out of business. Every one of them. So. Southwest was a more progressive management for us, at least. They said if the people buy it, we don't have a problem with it. And there was resistance, real resistance, because a lot from South Texas and all of that, they ain't doing no union. So we got union security, and we said, be our guest. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's worked out fine, Yeah,
they seem to be a very prosperous airline.
Oh yes. In fact, I wish, I don't get passes on them, so, but if I asked for them, I probably could, but now they go all the way to Aruba. Think about that. Mm-hmm. They only flew between Houston, Dallas, and I'm gonna say San Antonio.
Mm-hmm.
That was it.
Mm-hmm.
That was the whole airline route. All they did was fly around like this. Crazy. In fact, the government or American was so PO'd that they were flying. Have you ever heard of the Wright Amendment?
Mm-mm.
WRIGHT.
No.
He was a representative or a congressman, a senator, whatever he was. The Wright Amendment. They could only fly out of the Love Field.
Who could only fly out of America?
Southwest.
Southwest could only
Yeah.
fly out of left field. Okay.
Yeah. Which is a little tiny airfield
Yeah.
down on Mockingbird Lane or whatever it's called. I think it's Mockingbird. And their general headquarters are down there. I think now they can fly. I think the amendment has run out of time. But the gimmick was that if you flew out of, say, Dallas Love, you couldn't fly to Chicago Midway. You had to go to Tulsa, Oklahoma, or Little Rock, Arkansas, and then go to those. It eliminated nonstop flights, long distances.
Uh-huh.
I mean, they were trying to crush that airline,
It sounds like.
and it didn't work.
Right, of course.
It didn't work. In fact, all the major airlines went to what they call hub and spoke, and that's where every little town in the West flies to Denver,
Mm-hmm.
and then they go somewhere else. On Southwest, you can get on an airplane in El Paso, and you might end up in Washington, D.C., because they went this way and went that, and went. In fact, one of our radio stations, and the guys from Southwest were really pissed. One of the radio stations had a contest, and you're going to win the award was the flight to hell. And I go, let's hear this one. You get on in Midway, and when you hit L.A., you had made like 13 cities.
That sounds terrible.
But it was a gimmick.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it was a gimmick. So
Did the area that you visited as general chairman change over time? Did it get smaller as airlines merged, and the smaller airports might have been? I don't know. I mean, I don't know if they were closed. I
know what you're saying, and
Yeah.
I'm trying to think about it. All the stations that I representative are still probably around, but not with TWA.
Mm.
Like Phoenix is definitely serviced by Southwest, but I'm sure American and United fly there. Same with LA, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
Pittsburgh, we used to fly 1011s into Pittsburgh. And then US Air decided to make it a major hub. And they got giant sized and then went out of business almost.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So Midway Airlines, I don't know if you remember that airline. He flew out of Midway,
Okay.
but they wanted to do too many things too fast and didn't have enough money. Went out of business.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of the new Midway. Unfortunately, Cliff has passed away since then. Him and I were assigned to the new Midway Airport, or new Midway Airlines, down in Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina. And we loved going down there.
Mm-hmm.
But you could
Why
see
did you love going down there?
it was so much different. I'd never been in the Carolinas and
Uh-huh.
that, Well, sinus is killing me. We would negotiate, and here we are, just regular union guys, okay? And they're flying little tiny airplanes, and they go, "Well, we're the hometown airline." I go, "Hold it, let me tell you something. I don't want to scare you or anything, and you probably don't even care what I say. Southwest Airlines is coming in here to Raleigh, Durham. What do you think's going to happen to you then?" "Oh, we're the hometown airline." I go, hold it. I fly all the time. I'm going to fly on that airplane, or I'm going to fly on a 737. What do you think I'm going to get on? Wasn't 6 months later. Gone. And I found out, here, this is a strange story. One of our big points we tried to negotiate is full-time work. almost everybody on the property was part-time.
At Raleigh-Durham.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
for this new Midway. We go, part-time. We want more full-time hours. And he said, well, you better check with your people. We found out that everybody that worked for him had another job. They only used that airline to fly on airplanes. And not even their own airline. Mm-hmm. Because if you worked for Midway, you could go over to, say, TWA and ask the station manager for a pass for you and your family to go to Disney World. And you get it. And we were just shocked, because what do they want,
Mm-hmm.
So crazy stuff that we ran into.
Did you ever feel the sort of strong difference of like trying to organize in the South versus other parts of the country?
Only with Southwest did I ever notice that.
Okay.
And that's because whatever they ingrained in them, and I don't mean it was from home or anything else, that they were all going to be managers and station managers, mm-hmm. and plus stock options. Mm-hmm. If you've never heard the stock deals, any of the original employees, and there was a lot of them, were guaranteed to be millionaires when they retired. And they were. I would go into my res center, and hanging on the wall would be the value of Southwest stock on the wall. And they'd all be looking for it to hit, let's say, $31 a share. Because when it hit 31, they give them a 2-for-1 split.
What's the 2-for-1 split?
You got 2 shares for $31. And that went on for years. I mean, they were getting 2 and 3-for-1 splits. And when I said they were millionaires, there was the stock, mm-hmm. and it was worth, because when you buy it at 31, it don't stay at 31. It kept going. Well, it just kept giving more shares, and more shares. Mm-hmm. You finally retire, you want to sell your stock. We went to, and damn, I can't remember the dates, but we were invited, the staff was invited to Southwest's 25th anniversary. And they had a party down in Dallas, and they put it on big Texas party type thing. Jay Leno shows up and does 20 minutes. At the time they had a dancing ad mm-hmm. for the airline. Mm-hmm. They showed up and did their routine. The owner of the airline comes out, and he was, Herb Kelly, he loved wild turkey. And they have, the stir rods. You've been on Southwest, haven't you?
Yeah.
The stir rods with the little heart on it.
Mm-hmm.
We got sterling silver ones.
That's nice. Yeah.
Every chair had one sitting on it. And it says, and now for a good Texas welcome. We were told, dress Texas tuxedo. What the hell's a Texas tuxedo? Pair of Levi's and a what do you call it?
Like a dinner jacket?
A tuxedo.
And a tuxedo.
Or a coat.
Uh-huh.
One guy even showed up with a Cowboy 6 gun on him and that, with the hat. Because they could carry guns down there. Mm-hmm. For a Texas-style afternoon, step outside in the garden. Mm-hmm. Standing by the doors are guys with white gloves on pouring margaritas as you walk out the door. You know what was out on the stage? Willie Nelson's band. I'm about this far from Willie Nelson standing there taking pictures.
That sounds like an amazing afternoon.
Oh, I go, hey.
If they do everything bigger in Texas.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Oh, yes, they did. And I found out later, talking to some of, the Southwest people, all the big oil guys and that's the hotel that anytime they have a function, it's got to be at that hotel. Mm-hmm. I mean, the atrium was like 12 stories tall, and anyhow.
That's not bad for a little airline that only once flew between Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio.
At the 25th anniversary, they had 198 people that still work for them for 25 years straight.
Really?
Herb Kelleher, one time we were talking, and I said, Herb, I says, I'm from Chicago. I says, you know what happens if you have 25 years at TWA in Chicago? He says, no. I said, you're laid off. And they were.
Why?
Seniority. He came from the bottom.
But can you be laid off if you've got that much seniority?
Are you kidding me? We had guys with 40 years seniority.
It seems like the contract would...
Junior people go out first.
Right.
Yeah, well, 25 years, the guy with 1 and 10 and 15, they're gone already. O'Hare did this.
Okay.
I mean, I had 300 flights a day out of Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
At the end, I had maybe 10.
Okay.
You know. Look at St. Louis. St. Louis almost closed down.
Mm-hmm.
If it wasn't for Southwest in St. Louis right now, there'd be nothing out there, and they spent millions. This is some of the stupidity of government. The government could have bought TWA.
The United States or the Missouri?
Missouri.
Okay.
They were the most overserved location in the United States. Any guy in St. Louis could have gone out to the airport and gone anywhere in the world out of that airport. Anywhere. I'm talking even Moscow. We went to Moscow. They spent it on extended runways and all. See, St. Louis was designed when Charles Lindbergh was flying. That's why it's called Lindbergh Field.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, when you had piston aircraft, the runways were like this. For jets, they got to be like this.
Wider?
Way
wider. Okay.
Can't be next to each other.
Because we're on. I just wanted to confirm that because we're on a recording and people can't see you making those.
Oh, okay. No, that's okay. That's fine. They were too close together, so you couldn't have what they call simultaneous landings.
Mm-hmm.
You had to land one here, and then you come in over here. They started building runways 3 miles out. By that time, TWA was gone. Close it all up.
Mm-hmm.
You go down there now, it's half of it's boarded up, 3/4 of it's boarded up.
Really?
It's really sad.
Well, speaking of boarded up, there was the TWA terminal in New York that wasn't used for many years, and then they've turned it into this.
You want to see a film of it?
Very posh meeting center. Did you get to go?
I've been there.
You've been there?
Yeah, I haven't been there in 14 years,
Right.
but I've been there.
Okay, well, I'll check that out after we finish the interview.
Yeah, I think I still have it on here.
Okay. I'm glad that they were doing. I think it's a beautiful building. I'm glad that they're.
It's going to be turned into a. It's not designed for air travel, okay?
Right.
It's designed to say, "Oh, look, is this wonderful? Now where do I go?"
Yeah.
Whereas most of the airports now they're factories. I mean, when you look at them.
Mm-hmm.
When I started working, you had to push stairs out to the airplane. Now you get on a jetway and you walk down the aisle and you get on an airplane and they hit the whip and tell you, get on.
So you mentioned a couple of things I want to go back to. So that while you were general chairman and you were going out to all these different places, you would sometimes encounter resistance from anti-union folks.
Oh yeah.
Do you want to
Yes.
what kind of cities were those? What kind of populations were those?
Some of it was individual people.
Okay.
Okay, not a city. I can't indict a city.
Okay.
I'll give you one example. It's happened in Dayton, Ohio.
Okay.
I had a pass that says do not remove or downgrade. That means that once I had a reservation, a real reservation, not just I just showed up, and I was booked on that airplane, I would go up, present my ticket to them, and they would give me a boarding pass. They could ask me if all the first class is sold out, would you ride in the back, or the flight's oversold, could you come and ride the next one home? And we'd accommodate in most cases. If they were a real ass, we wouldn't. Because I had a guy try to take me off an airplane after after departure time, and somebody showed up. And he says, "I want to take you off." I said, "You ain't getting me off. I'm going. I got a meeting. Goodbye." And the guy just turned purple in front. Anyhow, Dayton, Ohio. The guy gives me a boarding pass, and I look at it. I go, "This is 27C. So I'm giving you a boarding pass." I says, "No, did you read the pass?" He says, "Well, that's not our policy." I go, "Is that TWA's policy or is that your policy?" And he told me it was his policy. I said, "I think you better get your supervisor on the phone." He gave me the other boarding pass.
So he had taken you out of first class and put you in coach because you were with the union. But were they...
Later on, he was a union member.
Really?
Well, at that point in time, they weren't union members yet.
Okay. And you talked a little bit about, I guess, when American was taking over TWA.
Yeah.
How there were no managers or supervisors.
Yeah.
How did y'all get to that point? I think that's really interesting.
People would quit.
So they were getting out while
they knew that they were done.
Okay.
They
I
knew.
see. So it wasn't like the company said, "Well, we're gonna get rid of this big hierarchy and y'all are gonna be asked to do more." It's people were leaving and you were essentially left to take care of things.
Well, if they didn't show up, our guys still showed up.
Right.
I mean, we were still getting on, we were told we're on the payroll. But these guys were managers. They might have been out looking for other jobs, other things. I could tell you little stories on that, where one guy out of Kansas City, I had him in Denver. And he was the station manager. And I came in there for a visit, and the guy's almost crying. I says, "What's the problem?" He says, "I just got notified. They sold half my gates." No, he went out there with the thought, I've got a 3-gate operation, and the flight comes in at night, and then they push it off, and they clean it, and they do all this work. And they just sold them all. He says, "Was my career over?" He left a career here in Kansas City. He could have stayed in Kansas City and been a supervisor, till we went out of business, or gone over to American even. Stuff like that that was the sad stuff that you ran into. One guy, I think, turned into an alcoholic because he just couldn't believe that they would do that to him and just close their shop up. And but our guys kept coming in.
Okay. So I think now is a good time to talk about Carl Icahn. I imagine you have an opinion or two.
Yeah, I do.
So, for people who might be listening to this interview, when did Carl Icahn come in and start running the company?
They were having financial difficulties. They couldn't get financing.
And this is after the big corporation had broken, that was developed in the 70s, had sort of spit TWA out.
Yeah.
Around 1980.
Yeah.
Okay.
We bought all them other places.
Yeah. Yes.
And some of them, again, that's what a corporate raider does, though. If I go in there and that unit right there is worth $500 as a unit, but if I take the dials off of it and the wires off of it and the plugs off of it, and I can get $300 for each one of them entities, that's the value. Well, he knew what the shares were worth on TWA or the corporation and the value of all these other things. I mean, we had a computer set up. It's right down the street, well, down from the hotel I'm staying at, KCAC it used to be. They had the computers down there. They had enough room on their computers. They did all of TWA's reservations. They did all of Century 21's reservations. I'm not sure there's corporations, and they still had space to take on other things. All had a value, and they would start unloading that stuff. Well, it all kicked to the corporate pot. We actually ran the rim of the north rim of the Grand Canyon for a while. TWA resorts. I guess we were the operators of it, the leasee or whatever you want to call it. We ran the built on the north side of the Grand Canyon, all kinds of different stuff. At the end, he was selling penny stocks on the light bulbs. Had an audit done of all the light bulbs at TWA, and was able to sell penny stocks on stuff like that. I mean, he actually sold the whole airline out from under everybody. American basically bought us for some aircraft and all the routes, and they really didn't care about the people, because they told the people, we'll take care of you, they told the government, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and they said they were going to keep St. Louis open. Well, that St. Louis, we got O'Hare. We're going to keep the overhaul base. They closed that down a couple of years back. Different stations that we had service out there. Now I'm hearing that they're selling the hangar. They don't own it anymore, but they're selling the hangar in Los Angeles for whatever, movie studio or something, I don't know. But all those entities and that. In fact, one of the deals that they gave us insurance, life insurance policy, guaranteed for every TWA employee. Depending on where you were in the hierarchy, it was between $5,000 and $10,000. That was a guarantee as part of the sale. You know that American tried to get and dump that?
Really?
I call them crap airline, but that's... I usually don't blast other unions, but the union on them is the transportation workers. My guys used to tell me, he says, hey, we finally found a phone number out for the transportation workers union. I go, would you have a question? He says, yeah, the number's 1-800, I don't know. I guess there was some humor and all that,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, and it seems during...
But Carl was something else. He was just... I think he enjoyed that stuff. His office. He'd have pictures of different stocks, and they were all corporations that he had...
That he had broken...
cleaned them out.
And cleaned them out.
Cleaned them out. If this building is worth $1 million, and we have stock out and it's only worth $300,000, I'll buy the $300,000. Now I own a building for $1 million. Now I'll sell that back lot over there for $300,000. I got a building for free. That's what he did. The routes that he took over, or he sold to American and that, those were routes that we were given by the federal government for Howard Hughes's activity with the war in World War II, supplying aircraft, different things like that. So, and of course, the guy from Pan Am was in bed with some other politicians, and as the movie The Aviator clearly shows, and that's mostly true. But he was not a good person, that's for sure. I know one of the headline papers that we saw, that when he forced the flight attendants out on strike, and he was out there serving them lemonade while they're picketing his house. I go, what a weasel. But he even had a guy that worked with him. His name was Kingsley. And they were financial guys, okay? I mean, they were just, all they talked about was money. And he quit him because he said, I can't work with a person that has no morals or scruples, so he quit. Crazy stuff.
Yeah.
One of the other guys that worked with committed suicide. A guy named Brian Freeman.
He's come up the last few days. Apparently he was the guy that recommended to TWA that they bring Carl Icahn on.
Yeah, they were all the financial boys. And they wheeled and deal. That's all they did. It's a lifestyle that you and I don't have a clue that's going on out there.
Yeah.
I see some of that stuff going on right now in other businesses, I think, and it's unfortunate that I'll say this, but the colleges, especially the business colleges, have to be training people how to be rat bastards. It's my opinion, because right now up in our area we have a food chain that was a very good food chain, and of course when they start doing this kind of stuff and getting rid of this and doing that, and I'll bet it's going to collapse, because it's to me it's a Ponzi scheme, you know. Oh yeah, we're doing real good. I had one with one of the corporations, their big space operator, and afterwards I heard about it. I said, oh, this is a problem. Let's say they sold the corporation for $7 million, but they told the guy that they were making like $5 million a year. They weren't. So he figured to make, I mean, when you're dealing with that kind of money, you think they'd check it. You know, I thought maybe they got greed and they just saw green or whatever. But I'm going, hold it, they ain't making $5 million. How's he going to pay the bill for the $7 million? He couldn't. They had to sell it again, and he lost it. And all these other guys walked up going, terrible. But that's the kind of stuff you got to watch out for now. Sorry to get off on a tangent
I'm
like that.
I'm interested to hear all that. So during the time also that you were general chairman, the TWA folks sort of watched Eastern Airlines collapse as well.
That was 89.
Yeah,
but that was, I'll speak about it, okay?
Yeah.
Charlie Bryant was the president general chairman of, I'm going to say it was 143. I'm not sure, okay?
I think it might have been 100 out of...
100, you're right. You're absolutely right. It was District 100. There were so many different districts at the time. He got into a fight with Charlie Bryant. No, Charlie Bryant got into a fight with the astronaut. Who was the astronaut?
Frank Borman.
Okay. He got in a fight with Borman. And I think he did one of these all or nothing things, and Borman just said, we can't do that. You know, we're not going to make it. And Bryant's ego took him out on strike, and it collapsed. And the problem, and this was a serious problem, I ran into it mainly in Detroit. I'd go to all their local meetings, and guys from Eastern, because it's gone, would get up and give reports that they had been to every airline. Nobody would hire them. As soon as they said they worked for Eastern, they were done.
Why was that?
Because they were union, and they went on strike, and they caused the place to go out of business.
Okay.
So they figured they were getting a bunch of revolutionaries, and they would not hire them. Now, I don't know if any of that progressed into court cases, or I just know that some of the big carriers could have, you know, like Northwest was huge in Detroit. We had 30 people working there in Detroit for TWA and maybe 50 people for Southwest. So, you know, you got hired, you were going to Dallas or St. Louis. And the guy got up there, and all his years with Eastern, he couldn't get a job, not in the airline industry. And then I was transferred out of Detroit, so I don't know what the end result was, but it's really tough times, you know. Especially if somebody got used to the benefit. I got to tell you, the past benefits for an airline were just, I mean, I think there was guys that would work for nothing if it was just for the passes and that. They'd fly all over. My kids got to go to Disney World every year. Disneyland, until they opened D-World, and that, Arizona, been to the Grand Canyon I go there every year. In fact, I'm going in September again. Traveling, taking them over, I know they didn't care at that age. I took them over to see the castles in England and all of that, and they're going, yeah, okay, you know. But it was great because my daughter, total retention on everything. And she comes back to class, they open up school, and the teacher shows a picture of a beefeater. Do you know what a beefeater is? It's those guys with the weird costumes that stand there with the spear and guard the king's jewels, okay? She met a beefeater when she was over there. She raises her hand, she tells him, and the teacher, of course, starts interviewing her. Oh, you went to England, blah, 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 blah. Said, did you go anywhere else? Oh, yeah, we went to Disney World this year, and let's see, oh, yeah, we went down to this place and that place, and she's going, who the hell you, Lou? My dad works for an airline. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But you know, I could get them a seat in first class for $20. It had to be an open seat, though.
Right. Yeah. That's a nice perk to have, I imagine.
Oh, it was wonderful. It was wonderful.
As someone who likes to travel but can't always do it.
Well, I understand that, you know. Like, I could have been down here in 2 hours, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I drove. Mm-hmm. I left at 8:30 in the morning and got here at 5, so. Oh, well. I had fun. Well, I enjoyed driving. I wouldn't have done it otherwise. Plus, I had a bunch of this kind of stuff, and Bob, you know, Bob's going through my car now, you know, like. Yeah, well, I said, hey, save some for the, you know, for the museum and for whatever you're sending it down to.
So, we've talked about a lot of stuff. Are there any sort of final observations you have about TWA and what it meant to you and the, you know, the way it
I'm sorry to see
demise.
it go.
Mm-hmm.
I miss the flight privileges, although I have some kind of privileges American. After they treated me the way they did, I won't even fly on them anymore. I even buy tickets on United. The sad thing about it is that people will never know how sad it was right at the end, because myself and Tom Higginbotham were the last people to leave the tables in New York when it was signed up that it was going to go away. And the hotel come running up there because they had ordered a big breakfast and everybody had eaten and all of that, you know. And they said, who's going to pay the bill? It says, TWA. They said, oh no, they just went bankrupt. I said, oh no, that's not true. And Tom and I got out, got in the cab and took off for the airport. Said goodbye. Oh, it was sad coming home like that. I knew, you know, it was all over. How do you tell people that? You know, it's done.
Right, and what did something like that do to people?
Well, I'm sure a lot of people had serious problems. I mean, not that unless you see them all the time, okay? I meet maybe every 6 weeks with a group of guys that were ramp people in Chicago at a restaurant for breakfast about every 6 weeks. And they keep in tune, this guy died, this one's this, that, you know, and, you know, it's big change I've had losing my wife, you know.
Yeah.
It's different. I've enjoyed my retirement though. Got some good guys out here too.
Yeah.
I guess Gary's over there. Bob Bax is here.
Mm-hmm.
Or Kansas City. Bob Haynes is Kansas City. And then we got a convention coming up.
Next week?
September, ain't it?
Oh, there's something Bob's going to next week. That's
probably
maybe the
retirees.
Transportation.
Maybe transportation.
But what's coming up in September?
I'm going to say the 19th or 20th of September. We have a district convention in Arizona.
District 142?
Yeah, 141's having one out there too. It might be the same time. And I always get invited because they know I'm going to go.
Mm-hmm.
And all they do is they provide me a room. I buy a ticket and fly out there.
Okay.
And I'm flying out on Southwest. One of the ladies in my res thing got me a super deal. I got a $281 round trip.
That's not bad at all.
I know. I thought it was fantastic. So, but you know, from and then what I do is I got a lot of friends out in Arizona, and I'm going to go up to the Grand Canyon, and I think Monument Valley, and then fly back.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so many of the people though, unless guys like Bob and that go to the convention, everybody's changed. The whole staff has changed. I know the only ones I really know are the Southwest ladies.
Jane.
What?
Jane Tackett.
No,
Yeah.
I don't know who she is. Who is she?
She's at the Grand Lodge.
Oh, see, I don't see any of them people either.
But she's out of Southwest.
Oh, she is.
Yeah.
Where? Southwest what?
I don't know exactly.
Now Ian is Southwest.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, she was in Albuquerque. You have Elizabeth. I can't think of her name. Elizabeth and Ann Lou, and the other one is from. One of them towns that got two names to it, in Texas. Again, my name slips.
Mm-hmm. Fort Worth?
Debbie Avon.
Okay.
No, not Fort Worth. It's Midland, Odessa. How do you like that?
Okay, yeah, that's on the
Odessa.
border.
Midland, Odessa. She's from.
Avon, A-V-A-N?
I'm gonna say yeah.
Okay.
Debbie Avon, and Ann Lou. She's out of Phoenix, Arizona.
Okay.
And Elizabeth, oh geez, I wish I knew her last name. And I know it, but I'm you get old when you get stupid, or stupid when you get old, or whatever it is. Very nice ladies, very good, hard workers and that. And most of the guys, they're U.S. Air or somewhere.
Well, are there any anybody you considered mentors that you might want to mention? Anybody that?
Yeah, out of Chicago, definitely Frank Score.
How do you spell that last name?
Score.
Okay.
It's been changed from Skornovaki. But Frank Score, Don Bernson.
Okay.
Don Bernson.
How did they influence you? How did they help you?
Well, they were there. Frank Score ended up being the president general chairman here for a while,
Okay.
a couple of years, until he had health issues. Don Bernson was lead mechanic in Chicago, and he's the one that first approached me on union membership and being a steward, and I worked on the committee with him. For a while there, we had both operations, Midway and O'Hare, because we had a crew down at O'Hare. We would drive down once a month to Midway to talk to the guys down there at Midway. And that's when Midway, before Southwest had even started getting big, Midway is now Southwest hub, a major hub, There's a few guys there that are right there. Quentin Kerr, who was the president general chairman when I came on, was very, when I see stuff in movies like this, I start laughing about it, because we would come down here and we call this the bullpen, where the guys all would, sit around, have desks, and do their paperwork before we have a staff meeting. But if there were special issues that you either had to put on or he wanted to put on, he'd call you in his little private office over there, and you could talk it out and not worry about getting zapped in the back or anything else, so. We had a lot of good guys on staff, and I think that's what really sold it with everybody. And that they knew that if we come out and told them it's A, it was A. You know, it's not, well, maybe we ought to look at B or something else. But
anything else you'd like to mention before we?
it was a good time. It was a good ride, tough, hard ride, but it was a good ride. And I don't think people are ever going to be able to do that again. I mean, as far as, the startup of airlines and, the growth and, all the excitement of it all. I mean, it was exciting. I mean, I can remember one time standing out there, and not as I'm a Ram serviceman, so you know this. And I'm out there standing in the hallway because O'Hare Field at the first in '61 was it's like a military camp almost. Red Skelton gets off an airplane with a little briefcase. One of them old briefcases that go this way instead of like this, and talks to everybody in the hallway. How you doing, Mr. Skelton? Good to see you. Glad you're flying on TW. Because when they come off the airplanes, there'd always be a guy there to take a picture. Star getting off at TWA. So it turns out he was in town for a day or two, whatever he was in for. I don't know what he was in for. It's Thursday and that's payday. I'm out there in street clothes. He comes walking down the hallway and I'm standing there. He goes, "Are you still hanging around here?" I'm going, how the hell did he even remember me,
Right.
He sees thousands of people in that. I said, "I'm here for my paycheck." He said, "That's a good thing." Got on the airplane. I go, stuff like that was, can't tell you how many stars I saw.
Yeah.
We walked down the hallway and never bother them,
So can I ask you, actually, while we're talking about this, a logistics question? So when famous people fly into an airport, like if they're in first class on a plane that comes from Los Angeles, do they get picked up in one of those little motorized vehicles?
No,
Do they?
that's usually if they ask for it, okay?
Okay.
But we had like ambassador clubs
Mm-hmm.
and our ground crews, they were famous for this. Our commissaries where we'd have them in the hallway, a lot of these guys would hide out in there.
The famous people.
They'd come in there and they knew who to talk to and they'd go sit in there and the guys would give them a coffee or a drink or sandwich or anything they wanted, But nobody bothered them,
Right.
They ain't give me your autograph or,
Yeah.
And say hello to them and that. Then they'd come in there and say, like Walter Payton. He was gonna buy a football team or buy into one. He flew between St. Louis and Chicago all the time on TWA. And he'd hide out in there, and they'd go, "Okay, Walter, it's time to go." He'd come running on. People wouldn't even know who he was.
Really?
And he'd sit down and that. You walk by him and say, "How you doing, Mr. Payton?" And just sit down. You know who noticed him?
Who?
All the black people would know who he was.
Ah.
And I'd catch that because I'd be sitting there, and they'd all, and I'm going, nobody else recognized the guy because he didn't have a uniform on. But guys like Edward G. Robinson, he's a little short guy, okay, and he had a full beard and he's carrying his briefcase, and we crossing like this. I go, "How you doing, Mr. Robinson?" And he looked. And he kept right on going,
I'm not surprised that he made a little grunting sound.
Yeah, well, that's,
Yeah.
I didn't want to bother them
So
guys.
you got to see some like old Hollywood stars too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Rode with them, and I also got to go to Vegas in the 60s. And
Nice.
I don't even go to Vegas anymore because it ain't my Vegas.
Right.
I mean, I saw guys like Don Rickles for $1 and sitting in a bar, pay $1 to get in there, and Don Rickles comes on and does a show. One time, me and the wife were in a lounge. Juliette Prowse, do you know who she is?
I know who Juliet Prowse is.
She's sitting there talking to her agent at a table in a costume. Got her legs crossed out here and there. Okay. When we had, not as many years ago, I think we got a picture of it somewhere. where we had to walk down the Las Vegas Boulevard with all the unions. Do you remember that? Bob would know the date.
Okay.
Frontier Hotel was on strike, and they were throwing out all the union guys, and it was a big blast. We were walking down there, and we're marching at night, and Jack Palance comes walking down the street. He had his bodyguard with him and that. I know, Mr. Palance. Hey guys, hey, keep up the good work. Right, kept right on going.
Yeah.
But guys like that are all over the place, but they try not to be in your face. That's all. I can't think of how many of them I've ran into like that. Hi. You know who Brett Hall is?
Brett Hall?
Hull.
Hull.
Bobby Hull was his father. Great hockey players.
Okay.
Highest probably scoring hockey players. American born. I'm on a flight. I'm coming out of Duluth, Minnesota. I mean, it's got 2 gates. I look over there and there's Brett Hall sitting in the lobby. This is at like 6 in the morning. He had just been traded to St. Louis. And the St. Louis coach used to be our coach in Chicago. I sit down behind him. I said, Brett, I don't want to bother you. I know you want to sleep. But before you get off the airplane, can I have an autograph? He says, no problem. And both of us flew down. He got to Minnie. Then he got on a flight out of Minneapolis and flew down to St. Louis. I said, good luck with your new coach. And he just looked at me and smiled because he knew he was an asshole.
Oh.
And he was. At Keenan. I don't know, you probably don't know who these guys are.
Not
I
in
was
hockey.
A hockey guy.
Yeah,
no,
not in hockey.
I not only played the game, I was a referee for 20 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you didn't even mention this in any of your...
Well, it had nothing to do
Did you
with
play
the
in high
union.
school? Did you play in high school?
No, I was what they call the senior leagues.
Okay.
We took second in the state of Illinois one time with a bunch of guys in their 20s.
So that's great.
Oh yeah, I got an Olympic-sized medal at home and everything on the wall.
Okay.
But then I refereed amateur hockey for 20 years. In fact, based on that, that's why I got
Bad knees.
both of them.
Both of them.
Both of them replaced.
Okay.
Wore them out.
Oh, that's an exciting.
Yeah, of
was
course.
that all after or
It
like?
was on Saturday morning or something like that.
Okay.
I'd get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and referee till noon, and that was...
But about what age range for you was that, or what years?
Okay, let's see. I retired in 89, so I was 49 years old when I quit skating.
Okay.
And I'm 70, going on 75.
Okay. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
That's it?
I don't know. Can you think of anything else we need to talk about?
I don't know.
Okay.